Thank you for tuning into Love Dripping from the Walls. I am your host, Elizabeth Ann Cunningham, and you are listening to Season 4, Episode 3. On this season, we are talking about the as-lived experience of people who are Black, Indigenous people of color, and also LGBTQ. I, along with my fabulous co-host, Jamie Smith, will be joined by people sharing their stories. This episode in particular is answering the question, what are your biggest concerns as someone who is BIPOC and LGBTQ? The goal of this episode and the season is that people who can relate to these stories feel seen, heard, and that they aren't alone. That those people who can't fully relate can understand life from different perspectives. And that in accomplishing both of these things, that we experience a greater connection as people. Did you know that Love Dripping from the Walls now has merch? Go ahead and click down to the episode notes and buy your hats, hoodies, beanies, masks for Love Dripping from the Walls and other Love merch. Also, whenever you buy Love merch, you support organizations around the world. Currently, we are supporting Autism Compassion Africa. So as you shop, you give back. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the episode. All right, so welcome to episode 3 of Love Dripping from the Walls, episode 3 on season 4. Heck yeah, thank you guys for being a part of my season 4. It is all about the intersectionality of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ plus people. So in talking about the intersectionality of this group of people, our goal is that the people who have this experience have some sort of experience inside of this, that you feel heard and seen and connected, and that the people who don't fall into that category, that you gain some insight, knowledge, education to other people's experiences, and that we can all be connected in our shared humanity, regardless of what our experiences are, that we're really just like, wow, we're really just all humans trying to do our best. And so thank you all so much for being here. We're going to have everyone introduce themselves as they speak for the first time. And I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Miss Jamie Smith. If you missed the badass introduction of Miss Jamie Smith, please go back to episode 1. This woman is a badass and a half. You don't even know. You don't even know. Just to give you a little insight, I met Jamie when she was running for city council in Renton, Washington. That is when I met Jamie. And that's like a minuscule thing of like how cool things that she's done. So
thank you so much. And I'm mortified every single time, but I love it. So please keep it going. I need to learn how to take compliments. So I am working on that. So thank you so much, and I am so thrilled to be the co-host for this season of Love Dripping from the Walls. My favorite ice cream is Cherry Jubilee from Baskin Robbins. Fight I think that stuff is awesome. And I have a Starbucks guava black tea lemonade addiction that is very, very serious. So, those things are awesome. For this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit deeper into the questions of the intersection between, Black and Brown Indigenous POCs and LGBTQ plus identities and experiences. Last episode, we talked a little bit about intersectionality from an academic standpoint, but this time we're kind of digging into it on a visceral and real level. And so this topic is about where your biggest concerns, as a Black or Indigenous person of color and an LGBTQ person. And so, and that shows up in a couple of different ways for us, for someone like me who is Black and female and pansexual, but tend to date heterosexual. I have a privilege that, people don't really know that I'm part of the queer community until I open my mouth and I start advocating for those types of things. So my concerns are like, geez, that beautiful stud won't date me because I'm too femme. Like, it's like it's those types of things. Whereas, you might have a different experience for someone who is, who is newly transitioning, or, someone who is open and, or Elizabeth walking down the street with her partner. So it's those types of things that we want to examine today in this session, and we're so thankful to have all of you here to help us kind of examine those things. So that'll we tee that up. What do you think, Elizabeth? We start doing introductions?
Yeah, so the question is, what are your biggest concerns? And so it really is just like, who wants to share first?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd really love to open it up to a discussion of like, what are your biggest concerns? And as an aside from what Jamie said as well, is that as Jamie and I have a lot of passing privilege, like obviously I have the most privilege and passing privilege of this group since I am white. And so what my role is in this is really just to listen. And I'd really love to just open it up to create sharing and what your experiences are and what your biggest concerns are. And also when you introduce yourself, maybe say like why did you choose to be on this episode? And then share what some of your biggest concerns are. So who would like to share?
I'll go first.
Yay, Paul!
Hey. Well, I'm Paul Anthony Martinez. And one of the biggest reasons why I decided to be on this particular episode is I am Latin, and I come from New Mexico, but now live in Washington. And I relate more to my feminine side. There's been huge impacts on me. And I feel like if I can share my story with other people and just show them that, it does get better, even though it never stops, it does get better. Mm-hmm. And so that's one reason why I decided to do this. And my favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip.
Oh yeah. Also, just as an aside, before I hit record, I was like, everybody can share their favorite ice cream flavor because I love
that. So for me, like one of my biggest concerns is really fitting in. Like I said, I am Latin, but I really can't hide my feminine qualities. My voice is a lot softer. A lot of times when I'm talking on the phone, people think I'm a girl. So a lot of times people call me Paula. And so it's really hard, to fit in with the Latin community. Because, I love the Latin community. I love the culture. I love the food and stuff like that. But sometimes when I go to, I grew up in the ballroom scene and try to put on that masculine, I guess, side of me is a little bit more challenging. And to be judged based off of being feminine. And that has been a huge challenge for me. And then, I really want to embrace my feminine side, but also I sometimes get judged in the gay community as well for being too feminine, and so it's kind of like a double-edged sword for me.
Yeah, I guess I'll piggyback off what Paul said. My name is Brian Prince. I'm an actor and athlete now I live in Seattle, Washington. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up there. I lived there since I was like 7. And favorite ice cream, probably chocolate chip cookie dough. But if you took out the chocolate chips and replaced it with like Oreo stuff,
yes.
I don't know if that exists, but they should get on it. And then a coffee thing, and I just wanted to say that, because I think this actually kind of plays into what we're all talking about. Mm-hmm. My favorite coffee drink is a pumpkin spice latte. If that makes me basic, I don't even care.
So basic.
So for me, it's an interesting thing, like the concern thought. I think there's definitely this idea of not blank enough. I think I might have talked about this last week, but I definitely feel like one of my closest friends, I went to art school with, Sage Coffee. They're an amazing comics creator and editor from Chicago. When I was coming out and going through a lot of those struggles, one thing Sage would often say to me is, there's nothing more queer than thinking you're not queer enough. And it was something that really, really helped me when I was struggling through times, because I often felt myself in this place of thinking like I'm trying to be more authentic to who I want to be, and sometimes I don't even know what that is, and it's tough dealing with that. And I think one of the hardest things about it is it would take me back to days when I was younger, like in middle school, and that's how I felt regarding my race. So I'm Black, African American, like however, whatever you want to call it, but like I can't explain how often my youth was filled with me just feeling like, yes, I'm Black on the outside, yet I feel like I was constantly being pulled down from both sides. So similar to what Paul was saying about like fitting into like his community, I definitely felt that like the Black kids in my school and community would be like, you don't act Black enough. And the white kids would be like, why do you act so white? And it was just this really annoying thing because in my head, I'm just like trying to be. And I think that's like an aspect of privilege that a lot of people don't talk about, because we often talk about the very extreme, like obvious parts of what privilege looks like. But for me as a kid, it was just like the privilege of getting to just exist without having to pretend or having to feel like you're putting on some kind of act by just literally wanting to be who you are is a real thing for me. And so I think, yeah, like one of my concerns is that since coming out, I often find myself in spaces where I feel like I'm almost, am I like trying to overcorrect now? Like, am I trying to put on something else? Like the fight for authenticity, I think, is a constant struggle. So
that really resonates with me. My name is Vanessa. I go by V. I'm a herbalist and an artist based in Seattle. I'm from California. But what Brian that was speaking just now, I really resonate with what you're saying about feeling like like every space that you're in, it's like, am I doing enough? Am I queer enough? I'm Filipino. Am I like being Filipino enough? Like, I don't really connect with like my culture that much, even though I really want to. And I think it's kind of this idea of like having to come out forever. That's a huge concern for me.
Wow,
yeah. Like, just the fact that people are always like, I think people, when they look at me, they're like, yeah, that person's queer. But like, it's like, oh, but they have boobs, so they're a woman. And so I think just automatically people look at somebody who is like a woman or passing as a woman and automatically think like, oh, that person must be straight. So they like ask me about like a boyfriend or like, and then it's just awkward and weird because I'm like, okay, well, that's not who I am. But it's weird because in different spaces, I feel safer, being like, yeah, I'm queer. Actually, I'm queer. But then I find in other spaces, like workspaces or certain family spaces, I don't feel comfortable. And so I find myself lying and being dishonest, which feels really gross and icky. And then I'm like, oh, I'm being a bad queer because I'm not standing up for myself and, telling people, no, this is who I am. But it's like, it's that feeling of like, what do I prioritize? Being honest about my identity or my safety. And I always feel like I'm struggling with those two things.
Yeah.
I'll jump in real quick. My name is Caleb Laird. I'm a person that likes to be outside a lot. And I recently realized that I'm a farmer gardener. So that's been fun to unlock. My mom's a horticulture major. My mom's been, her whole body's green. So I finally gave in to my birthright, I guess. My favorite ice cream is pretty basic. I like vanilla bean, but if it has peanut butter in it, I'll eat it as well.
All right.
My coffee orders. I like a nice white chocolate raspberry iced Americano, which is a little bit of cream.
Damn.
Yeah, iced coffee year round. I can definitely relate to. No, I am mixed. My mom's white. My dad was Black. So I don't think of myself as Black or white. I've always grew up being mixed. And it's been an interesting experience because I was raised white. I've never felt like I fit in with the Black community. And I've never really felt like I fit in with the white community because of how brown I am. And I can definitely relate to being like, oh, well, I'm not one or the other. I'm both. But how do I navigate that? Like Brian said, to just exist. Like, I just want to be me. I don't want to be labeled Black, white, mixed. Like, I'm also transgender, so that's where I fit into the community now. And like V said, where it's just like certain spaces I feel safe being myself in certain spaces I don't want to out myself because that could lead to very bad things for me. So it's been a struggle of, okay, am I going to be authentic to myself or am I going to be safe? Especially as far as now being viewed by society as a Black man, that's a scary thing every day versus before when I was presenting as female and, I felt like it still wasn't safe, but it was definitely safer than being a Black man in America these days.
So hi everyone, my name is Poppy. I grew up and come from Taiwan. And right now I'm in New York. Although my name is Poppy, I have 2 cats. So yeah, that's one of the fun facts I have. My favorite ice cream flavor is Earl Grey.
Okay.
Yeah, I like, yeah, and I like all black. That's the best coffee.
Puppy is sophisticated. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree to, be on the series because I think Elizabeth is really a passionate person who really wants to, contribute to this world, to make this world a better place. And I am truly touched by, her idea and her passion on this. So here I am. And I think my biggest concern is how can we be ourselves in this world full of labels? Like, from gender, I am a female. I'm born female, but I don't see myself, fitting any gender. So basically, I'm like a gender non-conforming person, but the society wants us to, label ourselves. You have to go to a men's restroom or a women's restroom. And then until we have, like gender neutral restroom, but that is not everywhere. And there are still, places where like some states is so conservative and they even ban this type of restroom and you cannot go into any restroom where you identify yourself as. So yeah, that's really awful and sad. And then in terms of, ethnicity, I'm an Asian, but I don't really see colors when I'm, getting along with other people. We are all human. I don't understand why we have to, be with our Asian peers and, stay away from, people that is not of our kind. We see these kind of division every day. We are trying to, form us and them. But that is not, how this world is functioning. We are all human. We are supposed to, unite as one and listen to each other and care for each other. And for sexuality, it's another level. I identify myself as a lesbian at first, but then I feel like I'm a queer because I also dated men in the past, although it didn't work out. I mean, I love women. Even I don't know why I just can't, fall in love with men. I tried. I figure out.
I can tell you why. I can tell you why.
Because I hate people like some of my friends said you are not lesbian enough. And I feel like, okay, what's wrong? I'm not dyke enough. I'm not, masculine enough or anything like that. Why we have to, label ourselves and try to be someone we are not. Even though I look like a man, but I can be, really girlish. I want to cuddle. I want to be like a little girl, sometimes in front of my partner. I think that's totally fine. We are on a spectrum of everything. We are not on an extreme, end like that. But this world is so, labeled like, and we how can we be our true self when the whole world wants us to be one thing or a certain thing? That is my biggest concern.
Yeah, totally. I really feel that, like how you're saying how you identified as lesbian and now you identify as queer. I really feel that because when I first came out, I was with a woman. I mean, I'm with women. I feel the same way you do about how I can't fall in love with a guy. Like,
Yeah.
But it was so hard because I feel like our society is so like caught on to labels. They like, you like have to define yourself. If you don't define yourself, people like freak out. And my biggest concern is that we hold on to those. And what I've learned is that my life is so much freer and better because I'm not like stuck on that anymore. And I understand that like sexuality, gender is fluid, and like going more with the flow and like realizing that like every day is different. And right now I identify as queer and non-binary, but who knows how I'm going to feel like in 5 years or even like in a month, you know? And I just wish people could like have their minds be more malleable because they just get so stuck onto that idea of like, it has to be this way or that way.
Yeah, it's like how we I don't know, it's like language. We so badly want to use language to define everything because it like creates this sense of security in our brains of like, I know what this thing is because I can define it and I can talk about it. I can say what it is. But I think one of the scariest things about life is that ain't it.
Yeah.
That ain't it.
You're certain. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think the sun's going to come up. That's what's happened every other day. But I don't know that. Future's a myth, you know? And so I think, yeah, it's hard being a person of color and LGBTQ because it's like two things where you have to confront that whole, like, you know, I don't know. And especially, so I can speak from my Black experience. It was just strange that in high school how, like, when, like, I have a seed of resentment for Chappelle's show. I'm gonna be honest, like, unpopular opinion, because, like, that was the moment when I realized I was different. Because, I mean, I knew I had racial moments before that, but that was, like, the biggest moment in high school when suddenly, like, I had all these white kids, like, asking me to wiki explain every sketch. And I'm like, yo, we grew up in the same neighborhood. I don't know. I don't understand it either. But instead of me just like thinking, oh, haha, I don't get it. Now, like, I'm losing credibility in a thing that I didn't even know I was in. And suddenly, like, and so it's just strange, like, being in that space of like, oh, I just got here and already I feel like I'm behind on the homework or something. And I just think, like, so when I came out and I started finding myself in more queer spaces, and then, or even in the non-queer spaces, when I would be asked questions, it's like I was being tested. Where suddenly it's like, oh, you know, I'm queer, I'm gay, I'm dating men now, and people were like, oh, well, like, what about this? How does this work? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, yo, I just got here, I don't know. I'm just trying to be happy. Why are you asking me so many questions? Yeah.
It's a journey. I feel like we don't just stay in one space. I can really relate to what a lot of you were saying, you know, like growing up in a very strong Latin community, I felt like I had to be a certain way to be safe. So I had like a goatee and I had like long hair and I'd pull it back and I was in a rap group. But deep down inside, I was at home dressing up like a girl and like total opposite. But I couldn't do that and be my normal self. And, you know, going through my phases, I do find myself now like relating more to my feminine side, but at the same time, I'm currently training for a bodybuilding competition. Ooh. And people are like, okay, where are you at now? Like, are you femme or are you masc? And I'm like, no, I'm just me. Like, it changes. And it's really hard when people try to put you in a box when you don't really know what the box is and you don't want to be in a box. So that's how I feel.
Definitely. Like I came out as gay when I was 17 because I knew I liked girls. And so I started really becoming part of, because I grew up in Washington. I grew up about half an hour south of Seattle. So it was just a quick bus ride up to Seattle, up to like the LGBTQ drop-in center up there as a, you know, late teens, early 20s, and surrounded myself with a lot of that like baby gay young dyke community. And I was part of that for like the next 10 years until I was like, okay, actually it's probably time to come out now as trans. And so it was kind of a weird transition being from, okay, here's who I've been and here's who everybody that I've known for the last 10 years has known me as, versus, okay, now they have to get used to a new name and a new pronoun. And I've been out socially for like 6 years now or something. And I've been out, transitioned medically for only a couple. And it's been hard for other people to shift from knowing me then to knowing me now. And I feel like some people take advantage of the fact that, oh, it's new to me. I don't know. I'm going to mess up. Give me grace. And I have a handful of people in my life that have known for over 5 years who I am now. And yet it's almost like it pains them to gender me correctly. And that they're just like, well, I don't understand it. I try, but you don't. It's very obvious that they don't try, and they try to fit me into the idea of who they think I am or who they want me to be versus, hey, I am literally showing you who I am. And it's harder, I think, too, as, somebody that's brown, because I feel like a lot of the attention is on the cis-passing white trans guys. You see them having a lot bigger followings. You see them being kind of like the poster children of trans masculine people. So it's not even like there's a lot of people that even look like me that are on the stage of here's what it's like to be a trans man. And it's really, really rough to even try to find where my voice in that goes, because like I'm not like super out like, hey, I'm trans, like, because a lot of it is I just don't feel safe. So I only come out when it's safe for me to do so. Like I'm not really like some people at work know, because that's where I really started transitioning medically when I got my new job. But most of the people who've known me over the last 3 years don't know unless I tell them. And it's just kind of weird to be like, okay, I'm not ashamed of being trans. I'm not embarrassed or anything, but it's also not something that I necessarily hear who I am. Here's who I am. It's just a weird balance of, am I trans enough? Am I out enough? Am I vocal enough? And that's why I'm on this. And I've, talked to Elizabeth before, because I want other little, Black or mixed or, trans guys of color to know that we have just as much of a voice in this community and in this world as our cis-passing white privileged trans guys. And
yeah.
If this gives one, little Black trans guy permission to be themselves, then I'm happy.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful.
Love it.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of like stuff about like safety and coming out, and even just being in this room with you all, it's very cathartic. Just hearing other people being like, yeah, me too. So appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really good to hear people, other LGBT POC folks, say that that struggle of like wanting to be authentic with everyone you meet, but also wanting to keep yourself safe, because that is a huge thing for people who are queer, LGBTQ plus, is like maintaining your safety, like your physical safety, your spiritual, mental safety. Yeah, there's so much that people can do that is very hurtful. And especially in like job, I'm always very cautious in like work settings, who I come out to and how I present myself, which I wish I didn't have to be that way. Mm-hmm. But you just never know. Like people can be to your face, like, yeah, I'm chill with you being queer, but then like, have implicit bias or, do things towards you that are really minuscule that other people would look at and be like, no, it's not that they don't like you. And it's like, no, there's something happening here because they found out I was queer,
Yeah, I just connect with that a lot because like I didn't come out until I was like 29, so it was nuts watching in my community like me having conversations with people I had known for 10, 12 years that suddenly were like, oh, I'm not going to treat you any different. I'm like, you are right now.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Oh, okay. Like, interesting. Whereas like, and then I was really surprised by some people who were like, oh, like, tell me about that. How's your life now? And I was like, oh, wow. Like, you're interested in who I am now. And one, like safety talk, one thing that brought up in my mind is how, and I don't know how many other people feel about this. I know I definitely do. Is like there's that saying that you hear in a Black household a lot, where we gotta work twice as hard for half the credit. Call it as political as you want. I think the Obama presidency was the definition of that. It's like how hard you have to work just to get half the credit as the other person, right? And I think in that idea, like there's something about, in at least from my perspective, of it's not just, I'm not just carrying my legacy, I'm carrying my family's. And it's so tough writing that balance of like, okay, I want to be me and I want to be authentic, but then it's this whole like I don't know, I don't know how, I feel so strange admitting that in terms of like safe spaces and spaces where I feel comfortable being out and open, like around family, it's the least.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And like that, like it hurts to say that, but it's true.
That's a conversation I've had a lot recently because I feel like I've been, I don't know, maybe it's the season, just dealing with a lot of like inner child wounds and processing pain and trauma that I've experienced from my parents. Like trying to confront that because I've always felt like I'm like the black sheep of my family. I'm an artist, the only artist in my family, the only queer person, always trying to like go outside of the traditional way and like do things my way, which has caused a lot of tension between me and my family and desperately wanting to be close to them. But how do I be close to people who just, I don't think they're intentional about it, obviously, but they don't really see me and they don't get me and the experiences that I've had and the like life, the path that I'm walking, they'll never understand that because they're not queer. I mean, there's just struggles that queer people like have to endure about like this safety thing. Like I imagine cis people aren't sitting there like, well, I can't tell that person I'm straight because then I'll be unsafe. Like that's not happening for them. And so that is just a level of trauma that queer people just have because how icky it is to have to constantly be walking on eggshells, making sure that the people you're being truthful to aren't going to then stab you in the back or come after you in a hurtful way.
Yeah, I studied hormones by 3 years because I was so afraid of how people in my family and the people that I call family would react. And it came to a point where it was almost like, am I going to spend the rest of my life being uncomfortable just so they're not uncomfortable? Or am I going to force them to confront their problems by being truthful to me? And it took 3 years to get there just because I genuinely love and care about these people. And, you know, they're telling me to my face that they genuinely love and care about me and respect me, yet they can't even gender me properly, or they can't use the name that I tell them properly. And it just came to the point where I was like, I love you, but I can't keep living for you because that's not living my life. And this is my experience and what maybe I only get one shot at it as who I am now, but I can't spend the next 40, 50 years not being truthful to that. And it was a really scary thing to be like, am I going to lose everybody that loves me by doing this? Thankfully, I haven't. Some people I have, some people I haven't. And it's their loss anyway because I'm awesome. But
yeah.
it was hard.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, it does impact us. You know, right now, something that I'm dealing with is next month is my father's birthday and he passed. And right before he passed, like a year before he passed, like for the longest time, I refused to talk to him. It was mainly because like he just would not really talk to me about, he would never ask me questions about, me being gay. It was just a subject we did not talk about. Like if I brought it up, he would sidestep it and go to a different direction. But it was okay for him to talk about women around me. And so it was just one of those things that I kind of pushed him away. And it was till the last year before he passed that we finally had the conversation and, got complete on it. But like so many years went by that I just didn't have that relationship with him. And so it's something that impacts all of us.
Yeah, I think, family relationship is really, really hard and the toughest because you have that blood in you that bond you together, even though, you don't want that connection. It's still, you are blood family. that's inevitable. And this type of issue is especially, serious in Asian culture, because in Asia, family relationship is even more like even tighter than in Western culture. And I know a lot of people, they gave up their identity just to, please their families, just to make their families happy, because they think, okay, my family provide for me. I have to, give up myself to repay that thing. And I think I am kind of lucky because my family is very supportive. But before they are supportive, they had a lot of doubt, a lot of concern about me being a LGBTQ person. My mom took like 5 years to actually, accept who I am and become supportive. She was really concerned about my safety. I think, all of us experience these type of like prejudice, discrimination, and we fear for our safety. I think that's a really legit concern. So, Mom, don't worry. I'm really safe now. And after, she had like some marriage issue with my dad, she eventually understand, okay, I don't want my daughter to live in a pathetic marriage with a guy. I want her to be happy. That's when she switched her mindset and become, really, really supportive. And she's been involving in many LGBTQ activity in Taiwan. And I'm so proud of her to do that, because I think that means a lot. Even though I might be unsafe in somewhere, I have doubt for myself, things go bad, but the fact that she is supportive really means a lot to me, and that makes a huge difference. And I really hope, parents in Asian countries can really, read the message and learn from parents like my mother. It doesn't matter what your belief is. My mom is a Christian, so it took a lot for her to really support me. And, as long as you love your kids, you can definitely, change. You don't have to change who you are as long as the love is the same. You love your children, and that can, let them know, let your children know. And that's the most important thing. And that can fix, a lot of family issues and fix the relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to point something out about what you said, Puppy. Like beautifully said. That's awesome. And I'm so glad that your mom came around and is like so supportive of you now. And like what I wanted to highlight about what you said is that you pointed out like the from you to your mom, like letting your mom know like, hey, thank you for supporting me, right? And that your mom could be supportive of you. And, like inside of this conversation of safety and like that everything's okay, it's like letting your parents know that like, hey, like everything that you did was awesome. Like whatever you did or didn't do, like the person that I am today, I love the person that I am today. And so whatever worked or didn't work, like I love who I am and you did your job. Right? Because I think parents often come from a place of, did I do my job? Right? And our parents have the same issues that we do, like, and the rest of society does, where it's just like trying to fit everyone in this box, right? And they're like, well, I'm trying to be in this parent box, and did I do an okay job of like raising my kid, even though like they're now LGBTQ, or like they're putting themselves in spaces that are like unsafe or that I deem unsafe, right? And so just like being able to let your mom know that like, hey, you did your job, and then her being able to like let that go and like have you be free. That's awesome.
And that's amazing, because what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of acceptance, both internal and external acceptance, and even if not acceptance, just look, let me do my thing that I'm hearing from everyone, on the podcast. I'm curious, acceptance is one thing, what are other things that parents or other folks can do to, create this safe space and kind of, address some of these concerns that you've talked about?
I think for me, it's just be vulnerable and be willing to ask questions. I know a lot of times with speaking with people, they're afraid to ask me questions because they don't want to upset me. But I would rather people ask me the questions and then I can clarify than never have the question answered. And I know, and even if it's just telling me that they're concerned for, I know like with my, with some of my family, they're concerned for my safety, and just asking, those questions about how safe is Seattle and things like that. That way I can ease them and clear up any misconceptions that they may have, but just be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah, I think I would say like, and this, I feel this for everyone in the world, but definitely in regards to the parents in the answering the question, is realizing that there is nothing wrong with being wrong. Like, it's actually kind of awesome, and it's one of the most relieving things in the world is being like, oh, I was wrong. Cool. Because I think the conversations with my dad, the hardest things about them are I can see this old idea, and this isn't even about like me or coming out, just like in general, I can see like these old ideas of like, but I need to be right about something. And it's like, nah, man, it's like, doesn't matter. Be wrong. It's fine. And then like also just like saying one last thing on like the whole acceptance thing, because like you said earlier, you're doing a lot of inner work on like childhood trauma. Like same, that's been my like last 3 years. And I think for me, what's been the most powerful is just like separating like the person from the action regarding my parents and like other family members growing up, and being able to see like who they are versus what they did, or the intention versus what may have happened. But at the same time, like, and this is a conversation I've had many times with my sister, is I'll be like, oh, this one thing I never told you about happened growing up. It kind of sucked. Like, I don't hate anybody for it, but it kind of sucked. And what she hears is like anger or hatred. And she's like, yeah, but you got to see. And I'm like, no, I see where they're coming from. And it's like learning to forgive without forgetting, I think is an interesting concept. So it's like, I usually use the metaphor of like, if you were in a car accident, it's like, hey, it was an accident. It wasn't your fault. My leg still hurts. It's no one's fault.
Right.
But I can't pretend like it doesn't, because that would be untrue who I am.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I think getting to a place where you can recognize like, oh, this is trauma and pain that I felt when I was a child, inflicted by my parents, but realize like, oh, my parents are human too, with feelings. It's complicated. I know they were just trying. They were doing the best that they could. And, I'm alive. So that's saying a lot, like you did a good job just in the fact that like, I'm here today and breathing. So, yeah.
Big thing I related to is, just like us being in the LGBTQ community, there's no handbook on how to get through this. For parents, there's no handbook on how to raise someone that is a person of color and in the LGBTQ community, and, in the world, especially with what's going on now. So that's something I've really had to take on, is like, kind of like Brian said, separating and really acknowledging my family for what they have done. And then, I love them so much, and not just my family, but everybody, friends, people I work with, separating everything.
It was an interesting thing for me when I came out to my mom as being trans, because my mom is probably one of the most accepting people. She knew before I did that I liked girls. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did I have to wait? She knew before I did that I was trans, even, because I used to cry when I was like 3 about wanting to be a boy, and I wasn't. And so I'm like, well, why didn't you say, you could have saved me 30 years, but okay. But she had a really hard time when I came out. I mean, I kind of copped out and did it over text message. And it was one of those, I love you, but I can't talk about this right now. And I remember just being like, okay, that's fair. But then we just never talked about it. And I would kind of, hey, you want to talk? No? Okay. you sure you don't want to talk about it now? All right. And so we did that for a few years, and we didn't have a conversation about it until literally the night before I started hormones. And so it had been years at this point that I was out socially and just getting ready to do it. And then I learned about all of her fears, and that she was scared for me, and that she just wanted me to be happy, but she was scared about what it could mean for me going forward. And that's when I kind of like looked at her, that she is just a human with the feelings, and she doesn't know what she's doing either. That even though she's an adultier adult than I am, that she has no idea what's going on, and she doesn't have the knowledge to have a trans son. And it, even after then, it still took her a while to go from this is my, introducing me as this is my kid. That's what she, this is my kid, to, oh, I was just talking to my son. And that's only happened within the last 10 months. And I think a lot of it is because we are around each other a lot more. We're living in the same household again right now, which has been a whole nother thing as an adult child living with your parent. But I've definitely have noticed a shift where we're a little bit more comfortable with each other as mom and son versus mom and kid versus mom and daughter. It made me realize that she doesn't know what she's doing just as much as I don't know what I'm doing. And we're figuring it out together. And I think a lot of people need to realize that, and that it's okay to change your mind about something. It's okay to change your opinion. It's okay to receive new information and new facts and be like, oh, I have a different opinion on this subject, instead of just buckling down and being like, no, I can't change my mind because it completely causes me to have an identity crisis about who I am and what I think. When you receive new information, and that's worldwide, it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, not only us need a safe space, everyone needs a safe space, even, straight people, white people, because we feel threatened when, our thought, our opinion is not standing solidly. So everyone needs a safe space. And I think a safe space is like what Paul said, have conversations and ask questions. Not only other people can ask us, we can also ask them. So what do you think about this? I know people get scared that they will offend us with all sort of questions, but I want them to ask questions. It's really important, to explain things directly instead of you trying to imagine the answers yourself. That's where, stereotypes and discrimination come from. We want the conversation to happen, and that's how we eliminate the stereotype, the discrimination, and to actually, start the transition of opinion, of your thought, and to, get everything together.
All of you are just superb human beings. Just listening to all of your experiences and your thought processes, I'm honored to be on this call with you. So thank you so much for sharing and for providing doing the emotional labor to just kind of have this conversation, because it's hard to even just come out and say, hey, my experience with my parents was not great, and you're sharing that with us, and that's just huge. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of Jamie. Like, thank you for doing this work. And I have an acknowledgement, and then I have a question. So my acknowledgement is just for anyone who's listening who is not a person of color in the LGBTQ community. Like, one of the things that I'm really getting out of this conversation that I hope other people are getting is when you are someone who has to deal with these things, like, everything from like, how am I safe in these situations, to how do I be my authentic self, to having to do the work, like all of you have had to do the work of separating, the humanity of someone versus like the intent of what they're saying, versus like how you took what they said. And then all of you have had to dismantle all of that in order to just be okay with, the experiences that you've had and the people in your life that love you. You know, we've talked a lot about family today. And so what I want people to take away, one of the things that I want people to take away from this episode is that if you are someone who has privilege in any way, whether that be white, whether that be hetero, whether that be passing, whatever that is, to really take on that emotional responsibility of yourself as well. You know, being a LGBTQ plus person, being someone of color, you kind of have to, like, you're forced to take that on. And so if you do have privilege and you're listening to this conversation, I want, like, my charge to you is to take on the emotional responsibility of where you get confronted by someone else's identity and unpack that in yourself first. And then, so that's what I'd love for people to get out of this episode, is unpack that in yourself first and accept all of those things in yourself first, and then see how accepting you are of other people, because I guarantee that you will be more accepting, and that the conversations that you have with people who aren't like you, who don't fit in those quote unquote boxes, will be much more productive, safe, even effective. Having effective communication.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes.
So my question to you all is, I'd love for everybody to go around and just say either what you got out of being on the episode today, or what you want people, like, what's the number one takeaway that you want people to get?
I'll go ahead and go first. I think the biggest takeaway, kind of like Brian touched on earlier, it's very refreshing hearing other people's stories, and knowing that you're not alone, that they've gone through, even though their paths are a little bit different than yours, it's still, you know, we all kind of talked about worrying about safety and things like that. So it's refreshing to know that it's not just me. I'm not the only one that has that problem. I guess the biggest takeaway I would, put out there is just for people to kind of just keep an open mind and just see that it's not what like television makes it out to be. Like, we're all like happy-go-lucky and partying and everything like that. Like, we are actually dealing with
not always an episode,
right? And we're actually dealing with, like how can we be our true selves at work, at home, in public, on trips. Like, there's a lot of work put into this.
I want to piggyback off that. Definitely, to a lot of stuff that Paul just said, it's so good to feel like I'm not alone. It helps. It goes miles. And to that last part too, yeah, like it's not all partying and will and grace. And and I feel like this is something I even want to say to people in the LGBTQ space that like are out but like don't want to do the work, because I feel like you hear about all these stories, the struggles of the going through the sludge of the trauma and the hurt. And even me, like I have a habit of like always emphasizing that and kind of almost glorifying it. But the thing I think I often forget to say is, I love me now. After going through all this stuff, like it's hard and it sucks and it's uncomfortable and there's tears you don't want them to be, and you lose some friends and you gain some. But man, like it's so good, and I cannot explain how. And so I just encourage anybody who's like, I don't want to have that conversation. I'm afraid. It's like, yeah, you will be afraid and it's going to suck. But afterwards, like, please believe me, it's paradise on the other side of the black hole. So
I am the most me I've ever been in my entire life right now today. Like, I have never been so like, and it's so validating. And sometimes I think back, I'm like, holy crap. Like, sometimes I'm like, holy crap, I did it, first of all. It's so much easier to not do it. But I'm somebody that firmly believes, like, if it's easy, it's not worth it. Like, you got to go through the suck to get to the good parts. And like Brian and Paul said, like, just knowing that y'all feel the same way that I do is so relieving, because sometimes, especially being a person of color in the community, sometimes it just feels really isolating, and like nobody else understands what it's like to be the demographic in the demographic in the demographic, you know.
Right.
And and just the takeaway is for other people, like, we're all just doing our best, and some of us are doing less best and some of us are doing more best, but we're all just trying to get through this experience, and it would be a lot less crappy if people just loved each other just a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really feel that. I feel the same way you do, Caleb. Like, I feel the most like myself right now, and that is so beautiful. And to think about, like, the journey that I've taken, and just, like, I'm so happy to be queer, and, like, I wouldn't want to be anything other than that. And so, yeah, I think I would love for people to know that, yeah, it is a difficult journey, but it's so beautiful because, I mean, isn't that what life is all about, is embracing who you are and living, like, to the fullest? And for me, like, the fullest is being completely who I am, unapologetically who I am. And that has made my life so much richer and colorful. And so I would hope, and I hope that people can embrace who they are and get out of this, like, mentality of sticking everybody in, like, a weird box. I mean, really, no one wants to be in a box. The whole reason we come out of the closet is because it's not fun to be stuck somewhere, you know? So, and I love just engaging and connecting with other queer people. It feels good to know that other people are struggling or dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. I think as queer people, or just as human beings in general, we have a tendency of thinking that, like, we're alone in the things that we're dealing with. And then you talk to somebody else and they're telling you, oh, I go through the same thing. And you're like, holy crap. Like, actually, like, we're not all that different. We all kind of go through the same stuff. So, like, why can't we just, like, get along with each other, right?
Right.
Yeah, I want to say, every single you, including myself, are so beautiful. And thank you all so much, for sharing. And for anyone who is watching this, I want to say you don't have to, fit in to any label, any box. You don't have to. Just be yourself. It can be difficult, but it will be the most beautiful thing that, in your life. And if you are encountering any difficulties, if you are having a hard time, it will get better. Seek help, have a support network. There is always someone who loves you for who you are. So don't give up. Never give up.
Yep.
Yes.
Beautiful. For me, when you are your most authentic and your most truthful self, you give the world a gift. And, and you give us the privilege of actually knowing who you really are, as opposed to what you think we want to see. And so what is so beautiful about this is that all of you have given us, like, your most authentic selves, and it is a beautiful thing. Thank you so much. I am definitely the better for it. And I think the world is better for it. So thank you for that gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for everything that you shared today. Paul, Brian, Caleb, Puppy, V, Jamie, thank you for being just the most amazing co-host ever on the planet. And I just want to leave with my favorite quote. I'm going to quote myself, but I...
Good.
Yes, girl.
But it's just that when I'm free, everyone gets to be free.
Yep.
That's it. Like, when I'm free, everyone gets to be free.
Mm-hmm.
And really being able to fully step into that. So thank you all so much for being free in who you are, because when you are free, you set other people free. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for facilitating the space.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you did it. Okay, hold on. I'm going to teach you this, okay? So you hold apart, and then you swish it out, and then you drip it down the walls.
Come on.
Yes.
I'm on the street. I'm gonna throw it up.
Thank you all so much. I love you.
All right.
Thank you. You're amazing.
Thank you.